Hello. Welcome. Welcome to another Telus. Look, this is quite the thing, this live business. Hey, let's try this again. Okay. Welcome to another Telus Storyhive On-Location Victoria. We're coming to you live from House of Owl, Victoria's co-working space for creators. We're located on the unceded ancestral Lekwungen territories. A deep bow, deep respect, deep love to the original caretakers of these lands, the Songhees and Esquimalt peoples. I'm sitting here with an absolute legend in my books in the world of documentary filmmaking and just being a powerhouse in the world of conservation, and really the relationship between humans and animals, and really emphasizing some important issues that are out there in the world. And so part of what this interview series is all about is skipping the resume and getting right down to the creative process. But for those that may not know who Patricia Sims is, maybe you could just share a few sentences, bring them into the Patricia Sims world for a minute.
Well, you know, that's probably the hardest question to answer.
Let's kick things off with the hardest question.
Any interview is like, well, who are you?
Yeah.
And, you know, I kind of ask myself that question every morning when I wake up. Who am I?
Yeah, any level of existential
could be a
philosophy.
Deep, philosophical kind of answer, I guess, but more on the kind of baseline professional answer. Well, I am a documentary filmmaker, and I'm also a conservationist, and very much an activist, and focused on, you know, making the world a better place through the lives of people and animals, the interrelationships between humans and animals. And I've spent my life, my career, exploring that world, exploring the world of wildlife, human interaction, wilderness, culture, wild places, and essentially that's what keeps me going, and it's my passion, and I think it's what's driven me since I was actually very, very young. In fact, you know, I've always found so much refuge in the wild world, and in relationship with animals, and the sentient animals, not always the big-brained animals, like most of us think of megafauna, the charismatic megafauna, but even the smallest, simplest creatures, you know, interest me too. I spent my early years really curious about frogs and snakes and toads and newts and salamanders. I used to spend my childhood wandering, you know, through the creeks in the area that I grew up in Ontario, and looking for these creatures. And I was always fascinated with life, essentially. So
very cool. So it sounds like your love for animals came long before your love for film. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, you know, in my early years, I really was oriented to becoming a scientist. And I loved biology. And, you know, in my sort of early pursuits, when I was, you know, in grade school even, you know, I was always like that curious little, you know, scientist. And, I mean, back then, you know, I would literally go and capture tadpoles it was the Credit River in Port Credit, which is just outside of Toronto in Ontario. I grew up in that area, and I spent my days on the Credit River, basically. So yeah, I used to watch these little tadpoles grow into frogs and that type of thing. So I started very much with that kind of science mind. But as I grew into high school, I also loved to tell stories, and I was very much a storyteller as well, and used to spend days writing stories, fantasy stories of, you know, of animals that talked, and, you know, all kinds of kind of fantasy worlds. And when I did graduate from high school, originally I went to study genetics and biology. I went to the University of Guelph, and I was very much focused in becoming actually a geneticist. And I was very interested in cellular biology particularly. But along the way, I got very kind of disenchanted with the scientific process. at that age. It wasn't fulfilling me on a creative level. I didn't find it to be creative, and that very well might have been just because I was in a large university kind of academic institutional background, so I wasn't able to really feeling like I was connecting. And so that's when I shifted. I went literally from studying biology and genetics to film school.
No kidding.
And made a big kind of 180 and became a filmmaker.
Okay, so it sounds like you were, get back to when you were young, you are fascinated with animals and you're also a storyteller at the same time. Now we're in university. Of all the different forms of storytelling, what had you move to film? How was that the format of storytelling that drew you in?
Oh, why did I choose the visual medium?
Yeah, instead of writing books or...
I guess because I liked the visual excitement of the photographic medium. I mean, I loved even then taking photographs, and I liked the sort of the real-time experience and being able to document that in some way. So, I mean, writing was always my thing too. And, you know, as I said, I used to write a lot of fiction and stuff when I was a kid. But it was a way to really be able to actualize those ideas and bring them to life. It was that kind of taking what was in my little imagination and being able to somehow express it. So
Yeah,
that's,
right.
I think, you know, what made me go for film. And at that time I went to what was then called Ryerson, now Toronto Metropolitan University, and took radio and television arts and then film and photography. So that became my career path.
Incredible. And do you remember the moment when you realized that film was for you, that creating film was for you?
Yes, I do actually. Probably my second semester at university. You know, I read about, it was early in that second semester, I read about this particular course, and it was just kind of like a light bulb that went off, actually. It was just like, oh, I kind of want to learn more about that. I want to pursue that. That sounds like interesting, you know, and the applications were actually coming up due. So I had to like race to get this application in to apply for the following, you know, to be interviewed and then potentially accepted for the following year. So
wow, okay. And stepping into the film world, then it also sounds like it involved a lot of letting go of the things that you were involved in before as well, right?
You know, at that time it didn't at all, really, because I wasn't very happy in that science world at that time.
Yeah.
It was part of it too. The motivation was that I wasn't feeling fulfilled in that kind of learning environment. I was craving something more creative, interactive, dynamic, and that wasn't happening, you know, in that environment in a university, in that kind of learning environment in big lecture halls and labs, and it just I didn't feel connected. So when I started going to Ryerson, I felt like I'd found my people. You know, it was a really big shift for me, and I had a lot of growth in that period of my life creatively. It was really opening up that, yes, I could be a storyteller really, and actually, you know, be among others who were passionate and driven by the same things. So so that was a really great opportunity for me to make that change. And it wasn't until years later, ironically, that you know, I ended up becoming you know, a nature, wildlife, environmental filmmaker.
Really?
Because the first part of my career, I wasn't doing this at all. I wasn't doing documentary at all. So years later, all the science and all that intrigue and curiosity that I had had as a young person for the natural world, for animals and, you know, wild places and all of that came full circle when it became my real drive as a filmmaker. It was later in my career that I started to do that. It wasn't right away.
No kidding. And do you think that it sounds like with the sciences, when it was lighting you up and it was your thing, it may have been fueled by curiosity, and then it sounds like the film path was also, there was a lot of curiosity there too. And do you find that curiosity plays a big role in the projects you choose to take on? Like, do you have to be not only passionate about it, but interested to solve something or to uncover?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Curiosity is the key.
Hmm.
With and especially the types of documentaries that have interested me, there has to be that questioning all the time. You have to be, leaving no stone unturned. And being able to really find those things that are maybe not obvious, and especially if you're in a kind of natural history filmmaking situation, it's a kind of a different form of curiosity because you're dealing with the natural world, and so you're often you're reacting and you're having to position yourself among forces of nature, and when that extends then into working with people who become part of your storyline, whether you're interviewing them or you're working with them in order to present a certain situation, then of course the curiosity is there about who are these people and what makes them tick. So I'd say it is the number one thing that drives me as a filmmaker, and I would say pretty much every filmmaker has to be driven by that curiosity.
Interesting. Have you ever had a project? Have you ever worked on a project where that curiosity didn't last for the length of the project? And what was that like? Is it? Are you like? Is it something where you would? Well, yeah. Like, I suppose you might need to finish the project anyways in those cases, depending on the circumstances.
Sure, I mean, if it's a professional, kind of project, then of course, you fulfill your professional obligations. But yeah, for sure, there's been a few things I've done that at a certain point I lost interest, or I, if I think what they were, and it wasn't so much that I lost interest. It was more about, well, I found out what I needed to find out, and then I was kind of done with it.
Yeah.
So it was over.
Yeah.
Not necessarily as a issue or a subject or a story, but for me, I kind of I had come to a point of completion with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine in the process of making the film, there might come a point before it's been released, or maybe even before it's being edited, where you have found what you came to find. Hey, is that? Do you find the last stretch of filmmaking, actually getting it ready for release, as like a completely different process? And, when your curiosity has already been satisfied, what do you do to take those final steps, to get what is fueling you at that point?
To get it done?
To get it done. Like, is it grueling?
Getting it done.
Or is it like, because like, who I know you, and for the people...
I just need to get this done.
Just got to get it done. And for the people who are watching this now and later, Patricia and I know each other. I was just joking before we started filming this that it's, Patricia and I, we are both very busy people, always moving past each other. We never have a minute to sit down and speak with each other. And so I was joking that I had to set up this whole interview process just so that we could have a minute to sit down and talk. So it's so great. I'm already learning so much about you that I had no idea. And we also have some people here in the audience on the set here and I'm looking around, and the people that I see are all the busiest people that I know in Victoria. So I'm so glad that we could do this and bring the busiest people in Victoria together, so we can just like take a minute.
It's a great way for you to talk with your friends.
Totally.
Let's interview you.
Yeah. Okay. So you're making these incredible films. You are fueled by curiosity. You're uncovering something, and I guess I've seen so many creators who, once that inner curiosity is satisfied, we lose the best parts of them because they got what they came for. And you've been a professional in this industry for a long time now. So I think what I'm hearing from you is that, that sometimes the juice goes away at certain points in the process, but you get it done and you just finish the project.
For sure, and I guess too, for me, the curiosity is key, but what is another big factor for me was the purposeful nature of the project.
Right.
And I think that's probably what shifted me into becoming, an impact-driven, environmental, nature, wildlife type person, where those subjects and those dilemmas and issues were really what was driving me, because it was something that that had to get fixed, or something that something needed to be done about, or people needed to have awareness about these things. And I felt that at that point, that was really my job, was to be a conduit for important things that people needed to know about a specific subject. In my case, it's related to animals and wildlife or environmental issues. I mean, I think most impact-driven filmmakers are moving from that same place too. That there's something that they become very passionate about, very curious about, and then want to go down that road of learning that and being able to share that with others. So that's why film is such an incredible medium in that way too, because it can really teleport an audience to a point of motivation. Film is really an emotional medium. It's it's not an intellectual medium. I mean, we approach it from an intellectual perspective, but when you consider what it is to make a film and what are the most powerful films, it's really those moments and the juxtaposition of those moments with sound and music and timing and light, and there's all these incredible variables that come together that suspend the disbelief, right? Which is what we seek to be doing as storytellers always, right? Is taking our audiences to this other place where they can become and absorbed with the story. So that process and being able to take that and have it inspire people to take action, to learn more, that for me became really, really important pretty early on when I started to do factual content, essentially. I started working in broadcasting, television, because in my early years I was more of a creator. I started my directing career directing music videos for the labels in Toronto way back when. Back in the glory days of music video production. I was a young up and coming music video director working for all the labels at the time in Toronto. Because I was a young woman, that was quite unusual back then too. There weren't too many of us young women directors roaming around, and so in those years I was brought in to work with their newly signed artists. So they're emerging artists, and here I was the term emerging wasn't really used back then, but I was like a new director coming in, and so I started my career that way, so very much working in a very creative kind of space, where we were doing these high concept music videos with, sort of sets and kind of narratives, as we used to call them, with performance and narrative, and then from there I went into directing television commercials. Again, working for one of the production companies back then in Toronto. They had a kind of a sort of a team of young directors. So I was one of these young, directors working in that world. And that was all very exciting, to do that. And then I started from that way, and then I started working on big movies that were shooting in Toronto back then. So, back in the early days, and, so I was very much seeing myself going in that direction of, scripted and narrative fictional content. And that was kind of how I saw my path. Until I had an opportunity to direct for a cooking show.
No kidding.
Yeah,
this is in Toronto still.
I was just actually telling your friend about this the other day. I'd kind of forgotten about this, but my very first kind of documentary type of job was directing these vignettes of Italian food in Italy for a very famous cooking show with a chef back then. So I went off on the road to Italy, and with my crew, and we drove from the south of Rome all the way up to Milan, and stopped all along the way in all the famous Italian cooking places. And we filmed everything along the way and created all these little vignettes of Italian food, sort of little Italian food stories, right?
Okay, so wait a second. So music videos, then and then it was movies.
Working as director's assistant, producer's assistant, AD, those types of jobs.
Okay, and now we're in Italy.
And now we're in Italy shooting little sort of film mini documentary vignettes for a cooking show.
Okay,
and
so
that's when I fell in love with documentary filmmaking, because they were basically mini documentaries, right? That were going in within a cooking show. They were like vignettes that were kind of, inserted into the flow of the show and stuff. So that's when I fell in love with it, because what I loved about the documentary process, and cinema verite as it is often referred to, is you are in the process. So it's very much improvisational, and that really spoke to me, especially coming from working on big sets, right, where everything's quite regimented, and especially big union sets, which I had now was working on, and it's like a military operation in many ways, and so what I liked in contrast to that was, in the documentary experience, you're often going into situations where you don't really know what to expect, and then you have to find the story. Right, you got to find the story. You got to put it together, like then and there, and that I loved. So that's when I got hooked on documentary filmmaking, and that's when I shifted.
Okay, so it sounds like that path is not one that you could have possibly planned out. Hey?
No.
Like, I'm going to do some music videos, and then maybe in a few years I'll do this, and then I'll end up in it. Yeah.
I figured I was going to, maybe become more involved in fictional, filmmaking and narrative and such. But
so there you are.
Followed along how things presented themselves to me, and then where my curiosity took me.
That's right, yeah. And has that always been part of you? Have you always generally followed your curiosity? Wow.
I have, actually.
And does that take a certain level of trust?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe insanity.
A little bit of both, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say a little bit of both. Yeah, a little bit risky from time to time, for sure.
Bit of risk, yeah. Because I mean, the projects that you have worked on, I feel like in that comment and that laugh, there's like 30 stories, that you could probably tell.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
And so once you've stepped into this world of documentary filmmaking, and now you're in the moment with the story, digging in, does that mean now that you are only signing up for projects that stir something in you that you do want to uncover? Or, is it still a brief that you're like, okay, is someone still handing you work and say, you've got to go do this? Or at this point in your career, were you able to go, I want to do this and I want to do that?
A little bit of both, actually.
Yeah.
I think what happened for me then too, like after that experience, and I had some other really interesting opportunities that presented themselves that I wanted to explore. And then I did do some really interesting documentary work independently at that time. And then I had an opportunity to work with City TV Much Music as a producer. So I went from, all of that to then being like an independent freelance documentary filmmaker and music video director. And then Much Music, City TV Much, were looking for a new producer at that time, and I knew somebody working there, so I found out about it and went to meet the powers that be there, and was hired, and then that became my world. And that was a really amazing, interesting time in Canadian television. And the history of City TV and Much Music is like, groundbreaking history of Canadian broadcasting and what was happening
what a time
in that era. So it was a very creative place to work in those years. So this is like mid-80s, right? And it
Yeah.
just much started, I think it was 1988, and I started working there in 1989.
Right.
So it was right in the early years of that. And so for me, it was kind of the perfect transition because I was really able to bring in everything that I had already been doing in my career. And I started working professionally when I was, relatively young. So I'd already done some things. And so I brought all that into that job as a producer in the new music, and then over to Much Music, and so there was a lot of opportunity there, and then that's how I fell into what then changed, my life, because I made a documentary about dolphins,
Okay.
and that changed everything.
Yeah.
And that's what got me back into being that kid
That's
on the
right.
riverbanks looking for tadpoles,
Wow,
right?
the
That
full circle
shift,
moment
yeah.
there.
And so all of that early stuff and that early science and all of that started to come full circle for me. And that's when everything shifted.
Okay.
And that's when I left Canada.
And that's when you left Canada. For
when I left
where?
Canada.
Where did you head?
I went to Japan.
Okay.
Yeah, I lived and worked in Japan for about 10 years.
Okay.
And I was doing...
So no more Much Music.
No, I resigned from Much Music and that work, and pursued exploration, oceanographic, filmmaking. I got very involved in the dolphin and whale conservation movement at that time. I was, doing a lot of documentary programming work for the Japanese broadcasters, involved in a whole bunch of different projects in that era. That took me basically all over the world and into all kinds of incredible explorations. And
Okay, so I want to just dive deep for a moment into creative process. So I'm just trying to imagine you with the dolphins or whatever one of these projects, deeply passionate projects that came afterwards. How does it happen? And I don't mean technically with the organization you're with or anything, but internally there's something that stirs you and goes, okay, there is a story that needs to be told here, or what is that moment? Can you pinpoint it where you're like, there's this thing that's happening and I can be of service to it, or it just gets me excited and gets me in movement into
the aha moment.
Yeah.
It is hard to say what that is.
Yeah.
I mean, you can kind of intellectually say, oh, well, I read this, or I've met this person, or there's those types of influences. But I think it is deeper than that. And I mean, I've been asked this question before, this what is it, right? And it really, I think, is best described as a calling, that there is something within, and you can't. What is that creative process for any of us? I mean, you're a creative person too, in your work with poetry and such, right? What is that? What is that spark, that thing? And you can't really pinpoint what that is, but you do recognize it when it happens, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what's so amazing about it is that. And so, interestingly, the dolphin connection. This is a story that I've told before, and I've been interviewed before on this story. The how I got into the dolphins was it literally was a dream. I had a very profound dream that I awoke from, and it was like, wow, what was that? And that led me down this path of needing to understand about dolphins. What was going on with dolphins? Why was I having these dreams about dolphins?
The dreams came before the film project.
Yeah. Wow. That's what led me into that world. It came from a dream. Literally did.
That is so cool.
And I mean, I guess maybe we still do. I ask myself this question: do I actually pay attention to my dreams as much as I used to? But I used to, I was much younger then, and I used to pay attention to that inner sort of space that for me was very profound when that happened.
Mm.
And so that's what led me down that
Wow, that's
path. And
super cool.
and it was completely exploratory. Like I had no pre-connection to anything cetacean, anything dolphin, anywhere.
Right. This
You
was
know?
just this. It was a
Yeah.
pull. It was, and
Mhm.
you again trusted, took maybe a bit of a risk,
Exactly.
and went
Yes,
for it.
exactly. And so that's what led me down into that, process there. Then I learned and read and wanted to make a documentary about dolphins, and so that's kind of how it all happened there. So that in that particular case, that was truly like some kind of
Mm-hmm.
something, call
Yeah,
it a
absolutely.
calling, or call it, some kind of purposeful sort of infusion of,
Mm-hmm.
direction from above,
Yeah.
But from that to other types of inspirational moments, certainly elephants, which
Yeah.
of course has been my life for the last
Mm-hmm.
15 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was not quite as much like a dream, but it was clearly this really deep sort of like feeling that I had to do something. That there was a real calling, is the best word for that.
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of led me down that path.
It seems like you're someone who listens to those callings. You wouldn't have had the life that you've had so far without an actual like leaning in and going, okay, I'm going to go that direction now. I think it's very rare for people to listen that closely to the callings when they show up.
It might be true. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say you do sacrifice. It's not really necessarily a rational way to be. It's there is a lot of risk. You don't know if things are going to work out, and but interestingly, I don't think I could really be any other way. I mean, I'm probably more this way now than I was then. Just out of necessity. But you just kind of, I never really thought too much about those things. I just kind of went where I felt
it's
my
part of
heart
who
was
you
taking
are.
me.
Has there ever been a moment when you're on a project or you're on the other side of the world and you all of a sudden go, wait a second, what the heck am I doing? Like, any of those moments where like, how did I get here and what am I doing here?
Well, in any of the expedition type work that I've done that's involved like a tremendous amount of logistics and complexity, no, I haven't ever wondered what I'm doing there, right? Because I know what I'm doing there, and so
that's incredible though. Like,
I've never kind of. I mean, there's been some instances where it's been kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, that this has actually all really happened or happening. But it's not from that place of, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? It's more just like awe of what has unfolded. But in those types of projects, and I've done some fairly complex logistical types of projects. So when you're in those situations, you do know why why you're there, right? You got to be really on.
Yeah, you have to be in the moment and present as.
I mean, maybe I might have gone to some parties where I wonder,
what am I doing here?
For sure, that's happened, but not in terms of my, some of my work and stuff. No.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's incredible that you. Yes. I've been to a few of those parties myself. Walked in through the door and go, no, I don't know why I'm here. I'm gonna go now. And so over this time, so now we've gone, quite a few years in the world of professional filmmaking and producing. Can you tell me about any common thread? Because you've done so many things already at this point. Is there a common thread that kind of links them all together? Maybe it's the curiosity that we were talking about, or what in you as a filmmaker was a common thread throughout the years of making your art?
Well, if we're talking about, these passion-driven projects, and it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, it was really about this interrelationship between humans and animals and nature, and that interconnectivity, and those dynamics. That's really the common thread through all of that.
And when you were young, back to when you were young and fascinated by frogs, did you want to tell people about the frogs? Okay, so there was that piece. You wanted to tell too. You wanted to share about them. And
yeah, totally.
yeah, it's amazing. That you've reconnected with that part of you, and maybe that's what we're all trying to do in one way or another, is reconnect with that child.
Yes, absolutely. I think so. I think a lot of kids are just gushing with creativity, constant.
That's right.
Little creative beings, and we're all like that. And as we get older, it gets beaten down, right? You have to take responsibilities, and but I do think that really is the real heart of the creative process, is that childlike wonder, and being in that where you can really be in the moment with something, I mean, music is amazing that way, because it's immediate, especially performance, right? And it really flows in that way. I mean, the filmmaking process is, film's a more complex medium, right? And in that way too, because it involves more stuff, and often, the dynamics and capturing things occur differently. So, you're still getting that, but you have to come at it a bit differently.
Okay, so filmmaker, but how did we get from there into World Elephant Day?
Oh.
Is there a lot of creating that went, between the dolphins and World Elephant Day?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, World Elephant Day grew from films, in fact, right? So we were making a film about the elephant issues that were escalating at that time, focusing mostly on Asian elephant issues in Thailand, and that human-animal, human-elephant dynamic, the conservation issues, the captivity issues, the ethics around captivity. At the same time, what was happening, and this is back like 2008, there was a kind of a surge of ivory poaching that was starting again after there had been a moratorium on the elephant ivory sales worldwide, and so a lot of elephants were getting slaughtered in Africa for ivory, and there was a number of reasons why that was all starting to happen at that point. So the world was coming, awake around this fantastic, amazing creature, the elephant, that is now being slaughtered for their ivory that they need to survive, and so any piece of ivory is coming basically from a dead elephant. So that whole awakening started at around that time that we were working in Thailand on the specifically the Asian elephant issues there. So as all of that started to escalate, I just felt that something needed to bring the world together on what then were a lot of different elephant issues that were happening in different countries, but nothing was consolidating global attention. So myself and my co-filmmaker, Michael Clark, and the directors of the Elephant Reintroduction Foundation that we were working with at that time in Thailand, which was a royal foundation, the initiative of the Queen of Thailand. In those years, the incentive there was to return formerly captive elephants back to the wild in 3 protected forest habitats that had been established by the King of Thailand. And so we started working with this organization there, and we're making a film with them, as well as making another feature film about the sort of bigger Asian elephant issues. And all of this is all kind of happening at the same time. So we were sitting around in the boardroom of the Elephant Reintroduction Foundation's office in Bangkok, and kind of all just talking about the horrors of what was happening in Africa and the escalation of the poaching, and when something had to be done about it. And so we said we need a day, something like an Earth Day for elephants. And so that's kind of how it was born.
Wow.
So the idea of having some way to bring the world's attention to the issue. And there wasn't any, like now there's a kind of animal day for every animal, you know, there's all kinds of world days, but then there really were very few. I mean, there was Earth Day, and I think World Elephant Day very well might have been the very first kind of animal day. And so I just started figuring out how to do that. How could we put that together? So, you know, at that time, social media culture was really new, you know, and it would be very, very difficult today to do what we did then, by building that really organically, you know, and from really the like very manual ground up creation of a database, and creation of social media accounts, creation of the World Elephant Day hashtag, all of that stuff, right? It was all very new. And so we did myself, I had a couple of people working with me to research elephant organizations worldwide, like how many were there, how do we find them? And we were just doing all this through like really, really basic searching. I mean, even then Google search was still pretty new, you know, so a lot of it was very sort of manual kind of forms of research, you know, and looking like through different types of, you know, commerce sort of journals for different countries, and trying to find organizations that were in different countries that were working with elephants, and kind of put all that together. And I sent out a mass email to everybody that was on that list, saying, you know, we're starting this day, like an Earth Day for elephants was how I described it, and want to bring everybody together on these issues. And so we, you know, if you sign up, if you're interested. And so we started to create this big list, and that's basically
very cool
how it grew. And many organizations wanted that, you know, because a lot of these organizations are feeling the same thing. Like everybody was kind of siloed. There wasn't nobody was talking to each other. There was no interconnectivity around these issues. And so World Elephant Day really became a very important consolidation of everybody's attention that was working in elephant conservation all over the world, you know, within Africa, within Asia. I mean, elephants live in many different countries, you know, and they're all very different, you know, politically, ideologically, spiritually, you know, there's a lot of differences between the different countries that elephants live in within Africa and Asia. So this consolidation of everybody's attention, and you know, World Elephant Day is kind of like the megaphone for elephants, you know, and it really just grew, you know, it grew far beyond what I could have ever have imagined, really, at that time. You know, what we were doing too is we were in the midst of making these films, and so we launched World Elephant Day with the release of the first film that we made called Return to the Forest, which featured the work of the Reintroduction Foundation, which was showing, you know, giving back to the elephants, putting them back into the wild. You know, these were elephants that had been used in the logging industry in Thailand, or in the tourism industry. Most of those elephants were captured from the wild when they were babies, and they were, you know, put into very abusive training situations and forced to, perform or log, and so they were being put back into wild habitat, and the elephants could readapt quite easily in those circumstances. So that was another really interesting thing to witness, how these elephants came together to help each other. And elephants have these characteristics that are so incredible. They help each other.
They help each other.
They're very cooperative. They're very social. They're very empathetic.
Wow.
So it was possible, much like human. You put a bunch of people together who aren't related, but they are in a survival mode. So they'll, for the most part, cooperate, collaborate, and elephants do exactly the same thing. So these elephants were coming from all kinds of different places, and were not within the Reintroduction Foundation sanctuaries. And this is like 500,000 acres of protected forest habitat. So these are like big wild areas, and they form these kind of like orphan families almost, that would kind of mimic the social structure of wild elephant societies. So they're, matriarch, and then the younger elephants and so on. So it's really incredible to witness that over that period of time that we were there.
Can I ask, I've heard that elephants also remember harm very well, that if they were harmed or a member of the herd, that is the case.
That is true. There are lots and lots of stories of that, and elephants never forget, right? And they will have a vendetta. They do take revenge. That's been documented.
No kidding.
Yes, it's a lot of cases of that. They'll come after that person who might have harmed them like a few years earlier, or harmed their baby, or harmed their friend. Yes, and elephants. I mean, we love elephants. They're incredibly amazing, magnificent creatures. They're also very dangerous. They can be very dangerous, and people, sometimes forget that. And that's the difficult part of being with elephants in captivity, and that's. I mean, they're wild animals in captivity, and the dynamic bond that takes place between the human and the mahout is a very, very interesting relationship, and that's probably the strongest thing that drew me into specifically the Asian elephant, because the African elephants don't have that same dynamic in human society as Asian elephants do. I mean, Asian elephants have like a 4,000-year history living in human society. So the human elephant dynamic is very, very, obvious with Asian elephant.
That's right.
And it's, and it's not always nice, in a lot of cases it's very abusive to the elephants. In some cases the elephants retaliate and kill their keepers. That's what's going on, right? It's interesting relationships between humans and elephants.
And it makes me think about not just with the elephants themselves, but even just likely in documentary filmmaking in general, the element of building trust with your subject, whether it's an elephant or the person that you're interviewing about the elephants, who might be on edge because they're not really sure why you're here and what your purpose are. Can you speak about trust in general in your work?
Oh yes, well, trust is is key. You need that, especially in that type of work. I mean, I mentioned Michael, my co-filmmaker, Michael Clark. I mean, he and I have worked together for, 25 or more years. We've done many, many projects together. And we've worked together for so long. We've been in some very complex, filming situations. I mean, Michael is involved with all of the elephant work that I've done. We did another project years back, a very complex project in the Russian Arctic and the Eastern Canadian Arctic, and you build trust over time. So, and this is the case with many filmmakers, as with musicians, with bands. I mean, you build a working relationship and a creative trust, and so the people you work with become really, really important in that process. And I think most creative collaborators will speak of that. I mean, you trust each other in that way. And then the other element of trust is trust of self, right?
Mm.
You know, trusting your own instincts. And sometimes that can be difficult, right?
Mhm.
You know, you can like, oh.
Is that something that you feel like you've had to learn along the way?
Well, you have to, yeah, sometimes learn
Yeah.
to trust yourself, that inner
Mhm.
voice, learn to
Mhm.
listen to that inner voice.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's very
yeah.
important. And sometimes that can be difficult, you know,
Mhm.
especially if you've got so many forces coming at you
Yeah.
so that's you know, having that trust in self is, you know, something really, really important. I mean, I always check in on myself on that
Mhm.
one, you know.
Mm.
Try to tune in as much as I can, especially if the things are difficult, right?
Yeah.
So,
And how about the animals, the dolphins and then the elephants? Was there a moment of having to gain their trust? And when you're working with them,
definitely.
mhm.
It's different though with dolphins and elephants in terms of how you work with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you throw humans in there and
Mhm.
maybe speak about the differences between gaining the trust of a dolphin, an elephant, and a human?
Well, you see, the interesting thing there too is if you're engaging with these animals when they're in the wild,
Mm.
it's a really different connection than
Mm.
when they're in captivity.
Right.
And that's complex in captivity because these are wild animals that don't really want to be there.
Yeah.
And they're incarcerated, right?
Yeah.
And often traumatized and abused
Mhm.
and so, you know, if you're in that type of situation, then, you know, it's like even with if you have a stray dog that
Yeah,
you
sure.
want to try to, you know, help or something, that dog isn't really necessarily going to trust you because the dog's been hurt or abused by other humans. And so it's patience and care and observation.
Mm.
But in the wild, it's different because it's you know, especially with dolphins. I mean, you know, dolphins will only hang around with you if they want to,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So it becomes very energetic, right? It's a very
Mm.
energetic kind of relationship, and they, you know, they're there to be respected.
Yeah.
And there's a certain I mean, I had a really, really recent profound experience with a sperm whale when I was freediving with sperm whales a couple of years ago. That was probably the most profound experience that I've had with any wild animal and
Okay.
big animal. And
Definitely tell us about that.
yeah,
Please.
it's very it's a point of surrender, you know, that you surrender to the awesomeness of this being, right?
Right.
And with that surrender feeling is this sense of truth. And you know, I mean, I believe that wild animals are always in their truth, right? They're always operating in their truth.
Right.
They have to be, you know,
Right.
and they're going to do exactly what they feel to do in that moment.
They're not overthinkers.
They're not over. They're not. You know, no, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah. So I had this really amazing experience with a sperm whale, and that this was for another project that I've been working on, and so I was wanting to freedive with sperm whales as part of this film project I was developing, and so went and made all, you know, set that all up to make that possible. And then I was suddenly, now I'm doing it. And there's the sperm whale. And I mean, I'm making it sound a little bit easier than it was. But, not, you know, fortunately, we're in that situation where we were starting to get a lot of interaction with sperm whales. And yeah, I mean, this encounter with this one sperm whale, like she just came right up to me and you know, just sort of held me in her gaze for the longest time, you know, and this is like this big eyeball, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of, you know, just looking right through you, but with you, like you know, they have, you know, there's such a intense
Presence,
sentience,
yeah.
of consciousness. Like you
Right.
can feel this energy field of this being around you. It's so there's no question that you're looking at an intelligent creature.
Right. But it's not there judging you on what you wore,
it's,
or
what I love about that feeling, and I've had that encounter a few times in my career life experiences with animals, with dolphins and whales mostly, and with elephants, I've always felt that the magic of that moment is the feeling that I'm being seen. I'm being seen, and it's reciprocated.
Yes.
I'm being seen as an individual. I'm being seen as a being, and and I'm seeing that creature in that same way, and so it's a recognition.
Yes.
And we do that with each other, right? In just as people, we might go somewhere, be somewhere, and there's this person, you don't really know them, but you acknowledge them, you see them because you're sharing a moment and something, right? And that's that same acknowledgement. And that happens with it's happened for me anyways with wild animals, where there's this acknowledgement of being seen, and it's an awareness. It's that they have an awareness. You can feel that awareness, and a self-awareness.
There's something when you say that, it makes me think about all the different levels of being seen that we're seeing each other now, and there is that experience of just seeing with your eyes. But when you put that together with what you said about the animals, they are always, I forget what you said exactly, but they're always themselves. Like they're not thinking about it all. They are showing up in their full presence. And to be seen in your full presence and to be seen by another creature that's in their full presence, sort of like here I am, it's exactly who I am. Here I am, not pretending this and pretending that. It sounds like is that right? Is that how these animals and maybe the sperm whale showed up? Is just like seeing you, not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it seems to just go on forever.
Right.
You get sort of suspended into this other place and time. Wow. I mean, that particular day, I had one of my friends who was with me on this project. We had a few really interesting encounters with those whales on that day. It was a very special day, and we were just, everything just sort of came together, and I mean, that's kind of what makes it all worth it.
Yeah.
All the trials and tribulations of doing this kind of work is, I think that's what drives any of us that pursue these types of encounters with wildlife or these types of projects is, you're going for this moment, right? And then the creative process around that, and it's incredibly rewarding, that when that happens, and then it makes you feel very blessed.
Yeah.
That you got to have that experience.
And did you capture some of those moments on film?
No. None of that was captured on film, and that's what was so amazing about it.
Yeah, right.
And often that will happen too, right? And I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Because often with, when you're filming, you're kind of caught up with your gear to some part of that too, right? And so it's a different kind of
that's right.
connection, right? You're trying to get those moments, and you can get incredible moments on film and photographically, and people do, but honestly, the best moments that I've had in this type of context have not been filmed.
That's incredible.
and I think it's because I didn't have a camera that they happened, because I'm more present.
Absolutely.
I'm not fuddling with my gear, or whatever, or figuring out this or this, right? I'm actually just in the moment, and that happens.
Yeah.
And you'll hear other stories too of other photographers or filmmakers that may have had the camera handy and doing something, and then suddenly something's happening and they capture it, right? And then that's super cool if it works out that way.
Yeah.
You know, but in this particular case, and there's been a couple others, no, there was no camera.
And I suppose that those moments that you have off camera, you know, when the camera comes out or when you're in the editing room, you're still trying to bring the specialness of that moment that you had into the film anyways. Like, it's not like it's not going to make its way into the film, but it wasn't captured, you know. And we're actually running out of time here, but I was I want to ask you two more questions, but I thought maybe we could see if anyone out here has a question at all.
I love the whale story. I've had a couple of experiences myself. One with a little fish that was silver with a bright yellow stripe. He was only about 2.5 inches big, and another with an octopus in Mexico. And I know exactly what you're talking about. When they're looking at you and you're looking at them, that incredible feeling, and you're just like, wow, we're really gigging on each other right now. You know, it's such an experience, right? And you can't even really explain it unless you're there in the moment. But they're taking in you and you're taking in them, and it is that curiosity, like you say. Each of us have that curiosity, and we're looking at each other with that curiosity. It is such a cool thing.
Yeah.
So
I hadn't thought of the fact that that curiosity was there as well. Did you feel that with the?
Oh yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
They're very curious. Yeah,
Very curious.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. 100%.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, elephants are very curious,
Yeah.
and dolphins definitely very curious. You know, they will definitely come and check you out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, only two last questions then. One is, if you could go all the way back into time, you know, back to when you first started becoming a filmmaker out of Ryerson, and you knew what you know now, would you do anything differently, or what's the lesson? So say someone's coming out now. What is the lesson?
Don't be a filmmaker.
Don't do it.
Run.
Run.
Go the other way.
Or what
No, I'm
advice would you
kidding.
give someone coming out?
Well,
Because you know, today there are people who are you know, just starting their adventure, their journey as a filmmaker. What would you say to them?
well, okay. There's a lot of ways to answer that.
First, run.
I run the other way. Well, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. You know, any creative pursuit, and particularly in the film industry and the music industry as well. Like they're complex industries, and so it's really important as a creative person to learn the business. I mean, whether you want to do the business side or not, it is important to learn that it is a business at that level, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're wanting to, because they cost money, and so that is something that a lot of people coming in don't realize, right?
Yeah.
They want to be a director, they want to be a cinematographer, they want to be a guitar player or whatever, right?
I just want to go and do that.
And great, and then you want to pursue that and be good at it, and then at a certain point you want to make things happen. How do things happen? Well, they happen because it is a business, and so that's an important thing that any young filmmaker person that I know or comes to work with me, you know, I'm always trying to inform on that level as best that I can, in terms of how that works. So that's probably the number one thing that I would say to anyone.
Yeah, know the business.
Yeah, and then after you sort of understand that part, and whether you know you're going to find your place within it, is, you know, to follow your heart, and that's always going to get you to where you want to go. And it can be very daunting to do that. And like I was saying earlier about, learning to trust yourself, and it's very easy to second guess yourself, and it's very easy to feel insecure or fall prey to, insecurities imposed upon you by others. And there's a lot of really intense dynamics that happen between people in creative work.
Yeah.
Because, if we're truly being creative, then we're like hearts on our sleeve, we're passionate, we're open, we're, so
open,
there
we're
can be
not
all
holding
kinds
back.
of stuff going on,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And all the warts are as visible as all the glory,
Yeah.
So that's where the trust element becomes really, really important. Trust of self, trust of those that you work with, and being honorable, is really important too. And respectful of other people's creative process.
Oh, that's
And
That's
you're not
beautiful.
always going to agree, right? In a creative process.
right, but to remain honorable and respectful within that. Yeah.
And sometimes in a working relationship, it's pretty clear you can't work with this person because you've got totally different ways of doing
If
things.
it doesn't work, then
And I think that that's an important thing to acknowledge, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you find it's not going to work out with this person, especially like as a producer, as an independent producer, I mean, it's really important that you work with people that you're going to be able to get along with, because it can get pretty complicated and gnarly, and things can easily go astray.
Yeah.
So you want to be working with somebody that is going to be, as good in the bad times as in the good times.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because they're relationships, they're like any relationship. It takes time, right, to build that relationship, and then to be mindful of yourself within that relationship and the other person.
Yeah. So, knowing the business, following your heart, being honorable. Which of those 3 lessons do you think were the hardest to learn or took the longest to learn in your own creative life?
Well, probably, I'd say having maybe the trust of self and confidence, probably earlier in the game. My career that time, I mean, it was, I think, I'm so happy that I think young women now coming into the industry, there's been some roadways paved. It's, I still don't think it's easy, but it's easier potentially than, I speak to women in my sort of generation, and we all kind of share these similar stories,
Right.
and it was, and that was the time, right? And that was what you kind of put up with. And so as a result, it kind of erodes your confidence on some levels,
Yeah,
right?
right,
And
of course.
So that's kind of the things that I sort of go, yeah, that was probably. And I was a lucky one where I, had enough chutzpah that, I was able to keep going and hold true to a lot of what I wanted to do. But, in a lot of cases it was difficult for younger creative women, back in those earlier years. So that would probably, in my case, I'd say maybe the most challenging time, I think of, when my career was, when I was working in Japan, and I mean, and that was complex because of my circumstances there, what that society was, right, at that time, and probably still is. I haven't been there for a number of years now, but, so that was probably for me one of the biggest sort of challenges in that sort of growing phase of my career.
You seem like unstoppable. Like you really do.
Probably unstoppable.
Like from the moment that I met you, I didn't even know what you'd been up to or all the things you had done, but it was like,
Much to my demise,
that person's unstoppable.
Yes, I am unstoppable.
Oh, but absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think it's for sure. Yes, I can't help it.
So then for Unstoppable Patricia Sims, what is next for you? What are you up to?
Project-wise?
Yeah.
Well,
And this is where we'll end with this question. So we'll wrap after
well,
this.
getting into the projects. How can I simplify? Well, World Elephant Day is coming up.
That's right.
August 12th. Comes around every year. This will be campaign 15, actually. 15th annual campaign of World Elephant Day. So each year it's a bit different, and so this year we've actually developed a really, really interesting new educational program. I'll just say that. Quite innovative, and so that's exciting. There's some serious stuff going on in that conservation world too. A lot of conversation right now about wildlife crime convergence, which is really escalating. It's now not just about ivory. There's many animals that are impacted worldwide. So wildlife crime is starting to become a big conversation once again. Of course, the climate issue is ongoing. So that work is starting to gear up. Usually around this time of year, I start getting involved with elephant issues and such more so, and then I have 2 other projects that I'm working on. That one is actually also related to environmental wildlife crime, actually in Canada, and that's kind of evolving quite nicely now. So I'm hoping we're going to be moving it into production later this year.
Very interesting. Okay.
And then another one that's more of a personal project that's taking some new shape now as well.
Okay.
And that has a lot to do with some of my earlier life and times.
No kidding.
I mean, I'm being very vague because we're at the end of our...
I want to hear all about that, though. We'll do a second interview, or maybe we could just talk about it, too, at some point.
Yeah, we could just talk about it. We don't have to have an interview to talk. Let's do a coffee or something.
Right, yeah. But that sounds really exciting, though. Really exciting. And so if people want to... Oh, no, 2 questions. One, how many elephant photos are on your walls at home? Do you have elephant art? The people at home want to know.
If
Patricia.
I've got elephant, I do have a lot of elephants in my home. I don't have them on the wall though.
Okay.
I don't have I have a lot of elephant photographs.
Yeah.
But it's funny too. People often give me elephant gifts and things.
Right.
So I have a lot of really special elephant things in my home, right?
Yeah,
yes, I do. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I was just imagining your home and thought there'd be like elephant wallpaper, but no, that is not the case.
No, there isn't. Others have that though.
Yeah.
I mean, I've given my family and friends some big photos of things that other people have, but.
No, your home decor does not need to be in alignment with your filmmaking conservation work.
No, it's kind of, I mean, I kind of dream elephants and
I'm sure you
every
do.
day. So I don't have them on my wall. I have other things on my wall, but.
And so for people that want to check out more of what you're up to or get involved, or is there any websites that you could send them to?
Well, yes. I mean, my CanazWest.com, which is my production company website, and of course, worldelephantday.org is, the best place for people to go to look at what is going on in that world and that work for this year, for sure.
One more time, CanazWest.com?
Yes.
And worldelephant.org, right?
Worldelephantday.org, yes.
Worldelephantday.org.
Yeah.
Cool. Great.
Yeah, so that's it's interesting about the social media. I find that I having been such an early adopter of social media, as I was saying earlier, I mean, World Elephant Day was really born because of those early days of social media. That these days I personally do it very little. You know,
Right.
I use social media a lot for awareness building for the elephant conservation work. But in terms of a lot of my sort of personal activities, I typically don't put a lot of it on social media. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I just don't want to go there.
Oh, I'm with you, 100%. I wonder how many people are there now, you know, that it's like we need to do this for business reasons or just to get the word out on this, but really for personal, I would just rather throw it into the ocean, you know. But
well, some people are quite active with it, right?
oh yeah, and
it's
they do a great job.
Their very way of life, right? And that's okay.
Yeah,
you know,
of course, it's okay.
You
It's
know,
100% okay.
I don't have any issue with it. It's
No.
just I don't really have time to do that. I mean,
No,
it's
fair.
you know, I prefer being with people one-on-one. Like this conversation with you is fantastic.
Yeah,
to be
it's
able to
been
sit here
great.
and have
Yeah.
talk like this, and you know, or hanging out with friends and
Mm-hmm.
like just not engaging through social media or through my Instagram account or whatever. So
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for having this conversation.
Well,
this
thank you.
in
Thanks
real
for
life.
asking me. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this.
It's been
great.
such a pleasure to get to know you a little bit more, and I feel like you, the unstoppable nature of who you are, we probably could have a 5-hour conversation, and and there'd still be, you know, numerous projects to talk about afterwards. But thanks for taking the time, because you really are probably the busiest person that I know. So yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm the second busiest person I know, and you're the third busiest. Well, no, we're probably tied, and you know. So, but thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you, Jordan. Thank you. I'm very happy. So.
Okay, well, there you have it, folks. That is another episode of Telus Storyhive On-Location Victoria. It's been an absolute pleasure. Join us next Wednesday. We're going to do another conversation with another Victoria creative and just dig deep into the creative process again. Thank you. Be well. Have a good night. And now I'm going to stand up and turn this camera off while you watch. Still. And stream. And over here.